You can finally play this classic game at 120 frames per second. Microsoft is officially someone you can sit down and have a beer with. Also, we may be getting more backwards compatible titles soon. Let's discuss. So the Quake remaster is getting 120 FPS support on the PS5 and the series consoles. Now, if you need a brief history lesson on what Quake is, it came out 25 years ago, made by id Studios as a follow-up to Doom, which you've probably heard of. It's very similar to Doom. It's a first-person shooter, but instead of going through hell and mowing down the legions of hell, you're going through kind of like a dark fantasy medieval-like landscape. You're going through this maze, shooting up orc-looking guys, demon-looking guys, other various bad guys, if you will. It even, back in the 90s, had full online multiplayer support, which is crazy when you think about how unavailable internet was back at that time and how crappy it was. It's very interesting to think about. id Software's creative director, which worked on Quake and Doom, even went so far as to say Quake he considers to be more influential than Doom. Very hot take. Either way, whatever your opinion is, Quake and Doom are widely considered to be the forefathers of what we know as modern first-person shooters. Quake specifically, if you are a big fan of rocket jumping in any first-person shooter that you play, I personally played a lot of Soldier 76, and I did a lot of that in my time matchmaking. Even if they weren't the first ones to do it, they were the ones that made it popular. So I'm gonna be thanking Quake for the rocket jump. Thank you. That was a brief history lesson. It wasn't really that brief. I rambled on for a pretty long time, but the story is that they support 120 FPS now on the series consoles and the PS5. And that's very cool to see because we are wanting Xbox and for these games to take advantage of this full next-gen hardware. We're wanting more games to go up to 120 FPS. It would be cooler if they had some of these newer games go up to 120 FPS, but that's gonna come, I promise, guys. And what I find cool about this is that they're adding support for our PlayStation brothers across the way, and I think that's very cool. PlayStation is gonna have updates to support your adaptive triggers and the speakers on your controller, and Xbox players are going to have support for Play Anywhere. Now, what does that mean? It means that your ownership and your progress in the game will transfer seamlessly from your Xbox console to your PC and then back again. It's kind of got me thinking, are we gonna see new Quake content in the future? I mean, all this focus and supporting of the old Quake, they just finished up their work on Doom Eternal and supporting that title. It would be pretty cool to see some new Quake content, whether it was a new Quake game or something set in the Quake universe, but unfortunately, I don't think that's coming to PlayStation with the state of things. In the event that a new Quake gets announced, make sure you subscribe, set your notifications to all, because I'm gonna be covering it. So Obsidian Games is a studio that was acquired by Microsoft in 2018, and you're probably familiar with them if you've played Pillars of Eternity 2, Fallout New Vegas, and most recently, The Outer Worlds. They're also currently working on Avowed, which is a highly anticipated Xbox exclusive. But an interesting little tidbit of information came out of this interview with the studio head of Obsidian. He detailed that before Microsoft bought them out, they were approached by another publisher. And this publisher basically said, hey, we're interested in buying you out, but we want to basically take all of your employees and put them on a game that we're currently working on that we're having trouble hiring for. And they said, that doesn't sound super appealing. So naturally, they turned it down, and he said, and I quote, "It has to be a cultural fit. They have to be people you can sit down and have a beer with. And if they're not, well, maybe you have to reconsider." And that's very, very interesting to me because I feel like people are not looking at Microsoft as a company that's so relatable. You can sit down and have a beer, chat with them. I feel like people look at Microsoft right now as like a spoiled kid running around with daddy's checkbook, buying studios willy-nilly. Just so they can be competitive in the video game marketplace. In NBA terms, it would be like if a big market team went on like a spending spree in free agency, just getting all these star agents, and then they went on to like win the championship. As opposed to PlayStation, who is supposedly doing it right by nurturing these little studios into something great like Santa Monica Studios or something. It's very interesting to see that these studios see something in Xbox studios see something in Microsoft that's more valuable than just their checkbook. While we're speaking about Obsidian, we now have details on Avowed. Jez Corden over at Windows Central got a bunch of leaks and then generously leaked that to us fans. And it's very interesting because Avowed for the longest time was a mystery. We knew it was going to be a first-person game. We knew it was going to be an RPG, but outside of that, we didn't really know too much about it until they dropped a trailer. It was a CGI trailer, but it gave us a better idea of what it is. And basically, what it boils down to is that, and you're probably gonna hear this a lot, whether it's a review of the game, whether it's hype about the game, whether it's YouTubers talking about the game, this game is like Skyrim. It's like the Elder Scrolls. Outer Worlds was sort of like Fallout. This is gonna be like Skyrim. Skyrim. According to Jez Corden, this game is pretty far along. They're gonna have a testable, playable version as early as 2022, if not by the end of this year. And even then, he wasn't sure about how old the footage was. It could very well have been several months old, the footage that he was seeing. So the chances of it being even further along than what he sees is very high. Like I said, it's very much like Skyrim, and those similarities you're gonna see right off the bat. Even in the CGI trailer that we saw at the end a first-person view of a guy holding a sword in one hand, holding a spell in the other hand. Where have we seen that before? And as Jez Corden went on to detail the different combat mechanics, you're definitely gonna be drawing instant comparisons to Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls. You can be a warrior that focuses on melee combat, that shield bashes, that kicks. Or you can be a sneaky assassin guy with 2 daggers sneaking around, nimble warrior. Or you can be a wizard with a sword in one hand and a spell in the other. Or you can have 2 spells in one hand to cast a more powerful spell. That's all very Skyrim-like, obviously. So you might be asking yourself, Ray, why should I care about a game that's sort of like Fallout, which is the Outer Worlds, and a game that's sort of like Skyrim, which is gonna be Avowed? And this is what I will say. I believe Obsidian is good people. Perhaps they're even people that you can sit and have a beer with. I think they make good games. And what I think they do the best is building narratives, controlling the pacing of the narrative, and building characters. I thought they did a really great job of that in the Outer Worlds, and I think that's most evident in Fallout New Vegas. I think it's why if you ask a lot of people who have played a lot of Fallout, they'll say, Fallout New Vegas was my favorite. Apparently the focus of Obsidian games is to really have these diverse landscapes, these diverse, colorful worlds, much like they did in the Outer Worlds. We're still not sure about what the story is gonna be, whether or not it's going to be an open world or sort of like they did in the Outer Worlds where you had this kind of hub that you traveled between planets and it was much more contained. But there is a job listing on Obsidian's website looking for a lead world designer, I think. It's basically, the job description is someone who's going to oversee a team who's very passionate about building interesting worlds, I think is what it said. Anyway, this is super exciting to me because fantasy RPGs are my jam. I played hundreds of hours of Elder Scrolls Oblivion. I played hundreds of hours of Skyrim, Witcher 3. Every fantasy RPG you can probably think of, I've played it, most likely. So this feels like the perfect opportunity to scratch that itch before Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. Hey, it's probably even gonna be a game that will stand on its own merits without being compared to Skyrim and Elder Scrolls constantly. And this is also super exciting because it makes me optimistic for Xbox Game Studios. When PlayStation had its showcase, they announced all these exclusive titles, and everyone was super hyped. Oh, we're getting a Spider-Man game, we're getting a Wolverine game, we're getting KOTOR. And Xbox fans were sitting here and we're like, we know games are coming out, but we don't know too much about them or when they're coming out. Good things are coming. Good things are on the way, I feel like. We haven't heard a bit of bad news about an Xbox exclusive title, Xbox first party title, in a while. Last video, Forza, apparently coming along very well. Halo Infinite, the multiplayer flights has people thinking, hey, this is coming along very well. And now Avowed is coming along very well. So, good news, very nice. So overall, I think Xbox has done a really good job of making original and 360 titles backwards compatible for modern day consoles. And it's such an interesting problem to have. As technology advances, suddenly the support for older games that require less advanced technology suddenly disappears. It's a little bit frustrating, a little interesting, but it's something that is a problem across all consoles. So a couple years ago, Microsoft announced at E3 that they were going to be winding down support for backwards compatibility, which kind of sucks because I love playing old games on my current gen console. I was stoked when I saw on Game Pass there was Fusion Frenzy, which was like this minigame focused game I used to play with my siblings all the time when I was a kid. But a new rumor has come out that maybe they're not quite done yet. At Special Nick on Twitter says, it seems some games may have been data mined, but sometimes OG and 360 games are tested for backwards compatibility, but don't make the cut, so I won't list any games as to not set expectations. Just a heads up that there's been activity here, so I'd probably expect something in November. And that tweet was reposted to r/gaming rumors or something like that. I can't remember the particular Reddit thread. It had people speculating like, oh, what titles would I like to see receive backwards compatibility support for the modern day Xbox consoles. And one of them that came up was Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. And I would love to see that game back again. I remember back in the day, I think I was like in middle school going on high school. Me and my friends were obsessed with this game. And at the time, I was obsessed with taking fighting characters that had like a weird moveset that you would initially think like, this character is trash, getting good at it, and then showing up my friends. For this particular game, that character was the Joker. And the Joker had a move where he would take out his pistol whip you, and then he would flip it, shoot the gun, but out of the gun would come a little sign that said bang, and he would go ha 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 ha. But if you did the right input at the right time, that move would extend. So he would take the pistol whip you, flip the gun, and instead of the flag coming out, he would shoot an actual bullet at you and keep the combo going. And I practiced this combo for hours. And then I finally got the chance to break it out when me and my buddies were playing. And I'll never forget this moment because we were fighting, it was a really close match, I was chaining off the sick combo and I pulled out that move, bam, boom, and everyone in the room said, oh, they had never seen it before. It was one of the best moments of gaming in my young life. I'll always remember it. So yes, I would very much like to see DC Universe come back. And the thing about these games is that even if you still have the original titles, the original discs, the original consoles necessary for playing these games, when they come to these services via backwards compatibility, there's always something that's added, whether they update the textures, whether they add new content, some bells and whistles that they update to make it a superior way of enjoying the game. Anyway, enough about me ranting on that Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. If you want an Xbox Elite Series controller, now is the perfect time because on Amazon they are the cheapest that they have ever been. They're usually around $180, right now they're $150. Now's the time to get it because Halo Infinite's coming up and you can use all of those fancy pedals to map all sorts of hot commands to it and give yourself an edge when Halo matchmaking comes out. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Make sure you like and subscribe, set your notifications to all, and we'll see you next time.